know that kid that will just not behave even after using all the tricks in your arsenal on them? You've tried humor, you've given them looks and hand gestures, you've used proximity by standing over them, and you've had not one, not two, but 3 one-on-one conversations about their behavior. Unfortunately, it looks like the only thing left to do is to implement consequences for their actions. In this video, we'll discuss how to do this effectively as a supply teacher. Before you hand out a consequence for a student, you should already have an idea of what would be effective. This will sometimes take trial and error and will depend on the age of the student. When brainstorming ideas on how to handle misbehavior, you could observe other teachers, read class management books or websites, or talk to a mentor. Do not go into a situation where you're going to implement a consequence without a plan of action of what that consequence is going to be. Remember that the school or board should have a school behavior system for dealing with moments of crisis, such as physical violence. If a situation gets out of hand, ask for outside help from a neighboring teacher or administrator. The effective teacher administers consequences with empathy and understanding, not with anger and a lecture. It's important not just for the student receiving the consequence, but for the rest of the class. Remember that you need to remain calm and in control no matter what the situation. If students see that they can get you frazzled, then they're going to continue to do that, and they will not stop until you completely unravel. When handing out consequences, you need to be ready for retaliation. If a student comes back with a, "but I didn't do anything," do not do one of two things. Either have the student convince you that they should not get the consequence, or give a snarky, demeaning comment back to them. If they are trying to retaliate and engage in an argument, you need to ignore the behavior or restate why they received the consequence in the first place. There will be times that the student will continue to escalate the situation, muttering under their breath, or getting the rest of the class against you. There is no perfect response to this. However, you need to stick to your limits as angry students will test them. Sometimes, removing the student from the situation can help. You can send them for a short walk, move them to a different part of the classroom, or have them sit in a colleague's room until they cool off. It's important to remember that whenever you're giving consequences, you need to follow the following criteria. Be consistent, be fair, be reasonable, and keep the end goal in mind. Being consistent starts at the beginning of class. If a student is throwing paper at his classmates and you don't acknowledge it until the 4th or 5th throw, what does that say to the students and to the rest of the class? Being fair doesn't always mean being equal. Fairness is not sameness. When you're implementing consequences, you should focus not on giving equal treatment, but giving what is needed by your students. You have to be reasonable. So often, a frustrated supply teacher will reach their breaking point and hand out a lunchtime detention to a student when it really wasn't warranted. Often, they weren't even the ones who got the teacher frustrated in the first place. You'll also want to avoid giving consequences that you can't enforce. If you hand out an after-school detention to a student who needs to catch a bus right after class, this is going to be a losing situation. Either they will ignore your demand, or they're going to miss their bus, which can be a problem especially for younger students. The end goal of implementing consequences is that you want the misbehavior to stop. The goal is not to punish a kid. The rule of thumb, especially as a supply teacher, is that you want to use as little consequence as possible to achieve your goal, which is a productive and enjoyable classroom. There are a variety of consequences for inappropriate student behavior in your classroom, and you need to decide what will work best for the situation. Some suggestions I've used in the past include assigning minutes owed off recess, keeping students after class to talk, writing a description of the incident for the teacher and having the student sign it, or sending the student to sit at another desk by themselves. Try to use as little consequence as you need to achieve the desired result, which is the student behaving appropriately. After a class where you need to implement a consequence to a student, you should reflect on how it went. If it didn't achieve the desired result, then why is that the case? What could you do differently the next time around? By reflecting like this, you'll continue to grow and develop your skills as an educator. For more tips and techniques, make sure you hit the subscribe button.